So, welcome everyone to the second of, I'm sure, many interviews with the incredible Brad Schow. What I wanted to actually do is start off with a bit of a recap. Last time, if you haven't seen any of those interviews or any of that interview, last time Brad and I were talking about, I suppose, a blanket would be maturity level of managed service providers, MSPs,
Yeah.
specifically because that's mine and Brad's experience. Brad for 20 odd years, me for 3-4 years now. And what I want to have a recap on, Brad, is we were talking about when does an owner, sales director, start to hire salespeople?
Yep.
And the mistake I fell into was using the term SDR, because
Right.
really the level that I sales train at is like maturity of medium enterprise, where you've got probably a sales director, you've got an established sales team, you've got KPIs, you've got process, you've got systems in place, you have an onboarding, and my job is to come in and critique it.
Right.
You're coming at it from the perspective of an owner that doesn't even understand what an SDR is. So let's
Right.
quickly help us
Yeah.
understand what is an SDR and how does that vastly differ to what a business owner that you're dealing with usually is actually operating at.
Yeah. It's a great question, Alex, and one that I worked with a few partners. We put together. We call it the growth kit, which helps answer the question because it's one of the consistent questions the last 20 years I worked with partners is how do I get out of owner-led sales? Like if I had to sum it up, it's that question, right? And when as a part like you mentioned, I was a partner for 25 years. And I looked at it as small business. And I think one of the major kind of gaps, one of the major problems with growing a business and then having enterprises working with small business is enterprise people tend to think small businesses are small enterprises, and they're not. They're small businesses. Like they're like, in my mind, they're two different almost species. And when you're a small business and you're a small business owner, and then you hear terms from people at bigger companies like SDR. Like they're like, I don't even know what that is. Like, well, like tell me what that is. And it's a sales development rep. It's like, and like you said, what are their processes? How would you measure them? What would you do? When you're that small business owner, you're in muscle and feel. Like I like to describe it like you're in a street fight every day to keep your business just kind of going and selling a little bit more and then delivering, and you're in charge of pretty much everything. Hopefully you have some help on the service side, but now it's like, okay, I could be more effective selling if I could take some of the busy work of sales off my plate. Like I know there's some things I could delegate. I could hand this stuff off. So you're not they're not thinking, how do I hire an SDR? All they're thinking is, I'm too busy. How can I have somebody take some of this kind of low-hanging fruit that doesn't require my kind of my authority as an owner, and let them do some of that stuff for me? Call and
So
make appointments and maybe do some marketing and things that they can't get themselves into trouble, but like it would take some of your busy work away so that you have more time to actually go sell.
so this kind of touches on a little bit of what we discussed in our first interview, right? Is you your owner director, you do not have the sorry, you're a junior level salesperson that's coming as a first time role. You do
Yeah.
not have the authority to start demanding paychecks, confidence in actually taking over entire infrastructures, entire processes. But what you do have is the ability to say, I can help. Let me just create an appointment so that we can speak as directors. So
Yeah.
let's actually just touch on that. So there's two things I want to go into. I want to talk about this, but I also want to double click on what your sales growth kit is all about.
Yep.
How did it get born? What is it? And how do I know when I'm ready for something like that? What I'd like to just touch on though is run me through an SDR is 4 or 5 steps down the road, right? So
Yep.
it's you're
Right.
moving. It's probably your second sales job. There's process, there's implementation, there's leadership, there's senior leadership that are looking after you. What are some of the things that a junior level salesperson can think about or do when going into work alongside a director or an owner to actually make sure that they're aligned in terms of expectations on them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to back up just for a second because you talked about they're not able to come in and take over processes and some of the things that like ultimately an SDR would do. And again, it's sort of, if you reset what we're looking at here, it's like this small business is an organization that hasn't even matured to the point where they even have a process. Like
Yeah.
it's just stuff the owner is kind of instinctually doing. And when we work with the owners, a lot of times they don't even realize like that there's a funnel in the sales process. Like they just kind of have learned that like, well, I got to gauge general interest and then I'll narrow it down and then eventually I'll sell. Like that's the way they look at it. They're not thinking it's a funnel or a process that needs to be managed, right? Like, so what we find is usually when you go to hire that first like salesperson, right? Somebody to come in to help with sales. First of all, you don't go from I don't have that need to I have a full-time need to keep somebody that would keep somebody busy. What you find is I need help in this area and I'm going to make up some numbers. Like, and the owner would say, and I could probably keep them busy, like doing some follow-up calls, like kind of organizing some of the like maybe a webinar effort and kind of hosting some of those things, just some things that like would really help me. Like the there is no process for any of those things, right? So the owner is hiring somebody thinking I could keep them like busy half time and then I could also have them clean the break room and yeah, like
So
like maybe
it's so outside of my thinking. And while you were talking there, Brad, I immediately went to that's a VR role. That's a PA
yeah,
VR role of
yeah,
like almost appointment setting, focus on basic level prospecting.
yeah,
But the minute there's a conversation there, get
yeah,
out of the conversation, involve me in it. So it's just
exactly, right,
yeah.
yeah. And Alex, here's what we see is uh there's a tipping point. And the kit we built is like the kit we built was built because like hundreds of owners have like trying to figure this out and they come to us and they say, well, what works and how do you get there? And it's like, well, it's you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. Like what you want help with is going to vary from owner to owner, and it's
Mm,
almost like you got to do whatever you need to do to support your ability to sell. Because again, when you're that size, I'm going to say like 1 to 10 million pounds in turnover or annual revenue, when you're that size, those owners of the businesses that you're working with will primarily only buy from another owner. Like if you bring another salesperson in, they're
mm,
not gonna like for those small businesses, they're not gonna trust, if you're selling managed services, they're not going to trust like what I would call a junior salesperson to say I'm gonna write a check to you because you represent your business for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or $10,000 a month, in trusting that you as a junior salesperson represent a company that I can entrust one of the most valuable kind of investments we're going to make, which is in our technology and our data and our
yeah.
security and all of those things. They're only going to make that investment if they can look the owner in the eye, like I want to know who I'm dealing with. I'm a small business, I get it.
Yeah.
I need to look the owner in the eye. And so the owner is going to make all of those deals until you get big enough where the company has enough of a reputation that kind of precedes or overshadows the individual sales rep. But when you're a small business, it's way bigger than what you think it is, like when you get to that size. And so what happens is the growing sales looks like whatever you can do to kind of pull yourself up, get a little bit of support, turn it into a little bit of structure to allow you to close more deals. And then when you get big enough, then you have to kind of flip that script and say, okay, now we can actually kind of start delegating smaller deals and letting kind of reps close smaller deals. But I'm still going to have to be involved in the big ones. And when you look at it, Alex, like even in the big corporations, um, uh, after you start that process of now I can actually have them closing deals, the big deals and relationship management a lot of times still will fall on like a CEO. Like if you're a really
Oh,
big
man,
deal, right?
you
Like,
answered my next question.
yeah, right. It's like the size of the business that you're dealing with is going to expect to deal with kind of the owner or the person that rises to
MD.
the level of like how
Yeah.
big they are, right? Like it's how the
So,
game
question
works.
question for you then, Brad, is because this is something I'm thinking about right now. Imagine I'm an owner of a business.
Yep.
How do I know? Imagine I've got a portfolio of 35 clients, and it doesn't matter about their deal sizes, and I haven't brought
Right.
on anybody else to do sales. And you
Yep.
can't trust your service team with,
Yeah.
you can trust
Yep.
them with delivery, but you certainly can't
Right.
trust them with account management or maintenance or any of this
Yeah.
stuff, or
Yep.
supporting with level 2, level 3, level 4 tickets and all of this stuff, right? So,
Right.
how do I know when to start looking at
Yeah.
junior people, account managers? Because
Yeah.
because the reason I'm asking this is because one of the biggest issues we see with M&A, so like merge acquisition, selling of companies, is the muddied water of value prop as owners step away, and because
Yeah.
they built
Right.
these accounts,
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
built these relationships. So suddenly, well, Brad's not in the company anymore. He's the one
Yep.
that promised me. He's the one that can make the certain
Yeah.
requirements, meet my needs.
Yep.
What happens now? So the
Yeah.
question I have for you is, how do I know when to bring on a junior guy or gal? And
Yeah.
how do I know when to start having account managers or sales executives? How do I know when to start making that
Yeah.
transition?
Yeah. It's a great question. And there's no simple answer, but I can unpack what goes into making that decision. Right.
Yeah, let's
Be,
go. Let's go.
yeah. Right. Okay. So and that's why Alex, a lot of times, like, that's why we see businesses just get stuck because they're never quite sure or confident enough in making that decision, or they make it poorly.
Hmm.
Or, and this is by far the biggest reason why they get stuck, they make it thinking that the impact that salesperson can have can match like what they've learned from growing a service team, which means if you hire a new service person, you can put them like on a help desk and you can make them productive within a week or two, or for sure a month
Yeah.
of bringing them on board. If you're going to hire a new salesperson, especially if you don't have established processes or you don't have a value proposition that they can communicate, like if you don't have any of those things, my experience and the people we've talked to said it's more like maybe 12 months to 18 months before those sales reps are ready to kind of close deals. Like, so if your expectation is I'm going to hire a salesperson and they're going to come in and they're going to take quota, right? And again, a small business owner isn't even thinking quota, but I'm talking like if you're, because that's a
Yeah.
language a lot of people represent. If you think they're going to take quota or a certain amount of revenue generation off your plate, you're kidding yourself. Like, what has to
Oh,
happen? What has to happen is you have to bring them on to allow you to close more quota while they watch you, and you develop some kind of a process,
over
some
what
kind
time
of a
frame?
language, right? And then they can start doing that slow but sure till you build
So,
it up.
well, so when I write onboarding plans, and this is now, bear in mind, this is usually sales executives, so usually experience of 5 years plus, to account manager, maybe expansion.
Yep.
When I write onboarding plans for, usually you've got 5, maybe 7 years experience, what I'm doing is helping business owners identify by day 60, is this person a cultural fit, an
Yep.
industry fit, and a sales fit, right? Those
Yeah.
three are
Yep.
really, cultural is first, right? The first 30 days
Yep.
is aligning to culture, and can they get on board with the ethos, the environment that they're coming into? Do they understand the industry they're coming into? So if they come from similar backgrounds, can they transition and get into my
Right.
industry and get into the persona, get into the mindset of the people that I expect them to be speaking to? And then can they
Right.
actually do the job? This is actually, funny enough, the last thing we look for. And the reason I share that is because if you can't join the culture, I can't teach you that. And if you
Right.
don't understand the industry, that's a will problem, and I can't teach will, right? Skills I
Yep.
can teach. I can
Yep.
teach you how to sell, and
Right.
I can teach you how to
Yeah.
run our sales cycles, but what I can't teach is the first two. So the reason I share that is because with 5 years, 7 years, or tenure as a minimum, we usually allow 3 months, 90 days to ramp these people.
Yep.
But you're talking about salespeople taking 12 months to ramp.
Yeah.
Which for ConnectWise, we can afford that. But
Correct. Yeah. Right.
for MSP that's turning over.
That's why it's so hard, Alex.
Yeah,
because what they don't realize is, again, they're so busy. They're in that muscle and feel mode. They're doing all of the instinctual things they need to do. They know kind of when they can cut corners, like how the process works. But if they bring somebody else down and they have to slow down and figure out, okay, how do I want them to do this? What does the process look like? Like, not only do they have the hurdle of identifying the people challenges like you just described, like, do they know the industry? Are they a culture fit, right? Like, in my mind, another thing is like, on sales, especially when you're a small business sale, like there's a lot of salespeople that you hire because they know how to talk, but they never learn how to close, which I've learned is talking and closing are two different skills. And a lot of times the first hire you make, they're good talkers, but they're not closers.
Yeah.
And so you'll like you can spend 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months like trying to like train up a talker, and like at the end of that year you're like, I got nothing for my money and I got to start all over. Like,
so I'm gonna do a shameless plug here. What the most crucial thing that I introduced, and this is I wrote this in my onboarding plans 4 years ago now. At day 45, at day 60, and day 90, there's what I call the checkpoints, which are essentially a benchmarking. So what I do, and I'm giving away all my gold here, right?
Yeah.
What we do is we take the top 5 performers in each team in the company and we role play with them. And what we're looking at is 5 to 6 competencies like prep, opening, discovery. You call it closing, I call it progression, because I don't think, well, this is the whole branding conversation and marketing really conversation, but really, I don't think we ever have customers. I just think we have paying prospects. And we should always be in the hearts and the minds of trying to win over a new prospect and help them understand roadmaps. But anyway, different conversation. The reason I'm sharing this, though, is because at 3 points in the first 90 days, what I'm testing for is, can you actually do the job? Can you actually sell me something? And what we do is we do a 30-minute role play, 5 to 6 competencies. And what we do is we look at, by KPIs, we look at the top performing 5 people in each team. And if the team's small, we look at the top 10%, 2-3 people, right? And what we're looking at is, how do they sell? And are they meeting the standard, which is what best in class is, which is what me and you talk a lot about. But also, when I bring my new person in, he or she, how do they measure against that? And then on day 45, if I tell you that you're really good here, but you're not very good here, and by day 60, you've made improvements, that to me, they have the skill and the will and ability to learn. That's why we add that in, right? And obviously I appreciate we've spent a lot of this call aiming at like small business owners. So they're probably not even thinking about this stuff yet. They're just like, okay, I can't even afford the £22,500 a year salary, let alone worrying about all of this stuff. I still think it's an important point, though, is that if you can build, whether you're enterprise level, so ConnectWise, Amazon, where we've worked, right, where we work now, and where I've worked in previous experience that you've got, right, if you're that level, you need to have this as a non-negotiable. But if you're a small business, at least start thinking about, what are some of the ways I can test this individual to make sure that if they are the right hire, I can ramp them in the right way quicker. If they're the wrong hire, I can get them into another opportunity that's better suited to them, right? I'm not saying that they're wrong or right fit, it's better suited to their skills. Anyway, one thing I do want to go back to, I want to put some meat on the bone around this, because what I'm worried about is, if I'm a small business owner and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm listening to this, and they're thinking, Brad, that's me. In a sentence or two, how do I navigate what you've just talked about here to the point of like actually knowing when to hire a junior person?
Okay. So 2 things come to mind. One, understand the financial commitment and that there's not going to be a return, right? Like, so like you need to have something kind of socked away to float your business profitability while you're making this investment, right? And again, when I talk about the kit, we have a tool in there that says, based on how much revenue you do, what your margins are, this is how much you can afford to spend on sales, right? Like, so we have a lot of that kind of in there. Now, I think this is what you're looking for. So how do you bootstrap yourself up, right? Like, what does it look like? Okay, so you hire a person. Here's three things you can have them do that are um, practical and progressive in helping you get some things done. Okay, one would be, yep, there is going to be a part of their job that is you're kind of going to be an admin assistant to the owner, which is good stuff, right? Like they're going to learn a lot by just kind of hanging around the owner and watching. If they're coachable, if they're teachable, if they have some EQ, they're going to learn a lot just by doing some of the kind of daily work that the owner needs them to do. That's one thing. Second thing would be you're going to take and after a short amount of time, you can have them doing some account management with what I would call like closely held customers, which means customers that you have such a great relationship, like you're like you would really have to mess up to for them to leave. You begin to let them engage and do some account management work where, look, the account management work is check in with them. Here's a series of questions you can ask. If any of these things trigger anything, roll it up and escalate it to me, the owner, and I'll take care of them, right? Like, and you begin, that gets them exposed to how do you have these conversations. It does begin to take something off your plate, right? Like you can do that. It's part of the training process. And then to your point about how do you tell if they're going to be able to progress deals? Here's the first thing we would ask new sales reps to do would be, look, you don't know enough to go sell our products or our solutions, like because you just don't yet, right? But what you should be able to sell is the concept of working or exploring working with us as a company. So go find anybody, whether you think it's a fit or not, like learn to sell. And this is what we want you to sell. Would you be interested in, can I get you to come to our office to have a conversation to see if we're a fit? That's a sale. Like at the end of the day, if you can get somebody to commit to that, like closing is that, like getting progress. Progress for us was we want them to have, and to your point about if they think the relationship is with the owner, that's the beginning to setting the stage for your customers to think we're having a relationship with this company, which is represented by kind of the main person that I work with, but I work with the company, not with the person. Because if you really go back and look at how a small business grows, the owner does that. The next most important relationship is whatever tech they trust, and then it will be their account manager. So as you grow and you're pulling yourselves up and building any kind of sales in your business, you have to kind of figure out a way to supplant. I have a relationship with an owner. Then you have to figure out a way to supplant. I have a relationship with my tech guy because I'm going to call the tech guy for an account management issue because that's what you've conditioned them to do, right?
So
So
it's probably a good point to plug, by the way. With Amazon, we delivered the same sales training to the sales guys and gals that we did to our SAs, so our solution architects and our senior solution architects. There's two main reasons for it. The first reason is what we needed is solution architects with the trust of technical acumen to be able to also manage and help with sales cycles. So to ask the questions that get into the technicals, because what they were taught is that yes, you have technical acumen, but remember, people do not buy products or services. What they do is they buy outcomes. And what you can't do is lose a customer in your technical jargon and your process orientated focus. And what you need to be able to do is understand that, yes, navigate that, yes, but also join your customer at the depth of understanding that they have. The second reason is with solution architects, level 1, level 2 tickets, technicians, 9 times out of 10, they might uncover an opportunity that the customer either doesn't know that they've got, the problem that they don't know they've got, or the company, the account manager hasn't been able to identify. So then with a few quick questions, instead of digging into the actual problem, which the customer may or may not know about, is we can ask a few basic questions, which then may uncover opportunities for us later down the line. So this is actually quite a good way to almost summarize this first little bit, is actually, could a small business owner, and this is a question now to you, could a small business owner start to give the technical team basic sales skills to start using on
Yeah.
When I log a ticket, when I deal with password resets, level 1 stuff, or level 2 stuff, whatever, could I start to give my technical team basic sales skills to handle these accounts? Question
Yeah.
to you.
Yep. It's a great question. And yes, you can. Here's a bit of the challenger on that. And this is a lot of times, again, I'm thinking of you're really trying to bootstrap yourself up by this. I You not only have to train them on like, here's some questions, right? Like, here's a sales approach to your component of a relationship with a partner. You have to kind of dispatch the rumor or the tendency for technical people to think sales is evil, sales is bad.
Oh,
Like, that's
yeah.
that's the mentality, right? In fact, a tech oftentimes will think, I don't want I it's my job to solve problems, and I don't want our customers to have to spend any money. Like, because it sort of reflects on, like, I'm not doing my job, or and you have to train them on sales is not evil. Like sales is a good thing.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful.
So
When
so
done in the right way, this is why me and you talk so extensively about how people don't buy products, people buy outcomes, and we don't ever really sell the product. What you talk about is, yes, these products enable you, but let's look at the roadmap and what you want to be enabled to go and do, and why
right.
you want that in the first place, right? Because you might be trying to buy something that you're never going to use, never going to be able to fully deploy, or has features, functions, capabilities that are way above anything that you need to be entertaining right
Yeah.
now. And by the way, pen and paper or Excel
Yeah.
will probably solve that just as good as this will,
Right.
but
Yep.
for free. Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Yep.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted.
Well, no, I mean, the other kind of the tangential point to that is usually when you're the owner and you're the main salesperson and you're in a like a TSP or an MSP, you are also your own sales engineer. The owner is. You're
Mm.
now inviting some of your technical people to learn their new skill that they're going to have to learn, which is, how can I be a sales engineer? How can I support sales in a way that is more of like architecting or identifying or uncovering things without kind of the necessary end game of where I'm going to dive in and fix it right away. But like, I have to uncover opportunity, and most technically you're gonna have to pull that away from the owner ultimately, right? Like, you have to build that muscle, that sales engineer muscle inside your organization as you like build an account management structure and team and process, and as you go hire kind of outside sales reps or hunters or whatever you want to call them. Like, you're going to have to take that away from the owner as well. So um if we go back and summarize, I think, kind of like your original question of like, well, what can you do? It's like, right,
We're
there's a
solving some
lot
big
here,
problems in the
right? There's a
brand.
lot here. But if you bring that salesperson in, like, your first sales hire, and you have them do some of the kind of fundamental work that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, give them some basic account management guidance and let them work with some customers that aren't going anywhere, and then ask them to just progress a relationship from somebody that, like, doesn't know anything about your business to they're willing to come in and listen to the business. Like, you are making progress. Then the next step that you're talking about is uh, for your tech team to identify opportunities with new customers, right? Like, that
Hmm.
we would always preach to our technical team, you're our best sales, like, arm. Like,
Mm.
you're embedded with our at this size, you're embedded with our customers every day. You're able to see and influence opportunities we can't see and influence. Recognize those things, find a way to create an opportunity out of them. Now, what you can do is, the next step for that new salesperson is, you can have them follow up on some of the basic ones that aren't like re-architecting their network. But if it's, they need a new workstation or two, they need a printer, they need an upgrade on their firewall, those are now things that, again, that new sales rep can start to take off the owner's plate, right? Like, and so then you expand it. And then, if I like sort of cut to the chase, what happens is, eventually you get a few people working like that, and then you can start forming out of the kind of primordial ooze of building a sales team. You can start doing version 1 of what you would call an SDR. We're like, okay,
Yeah.
we can now have a person do just this. right?
So
But you got to
I
pull
just want
yourself
to
up to that.
I want to go back like a sentence or two, and that is with something you've got with technical teams, which is why you also need to teach them sales, because if they start trying to help someone uncover an opportunity, the one thing that the tech side usually have is trust. And if you think back to our first call when we talked about how trust and results are pretty much the pinnacles of all sales conversations,
Yeah.
one of the things we teach in prospecting 101 is the idea of reframing how we look at prospecting and new customers, net new logos, and all of this stuff. It's that idea of trust and how sales is seen. It's really crucial what you actually just said there, of the fact that our technical team have trust with the company, and we need to teach them how to manage sales cycles, teach them how to appropriately discuss those things with conversations. So, because what you don't want is a technical resource trying to sell and it make it sound like we're pushing something down their throat. Now, the addition to that is it goes back to the conversation of what we teach in the first 30 days of all onboardings, which is culture. And this is where, if you look at any of the work, I mean, Simon Sinek in 2009 with Golden Circle he was pioneering, and he really brought to light the idea of find your why and company culture. But he is already kind of like 5 years too late. This stuff's been find your why, lead with why in a business, mission, values, virtue. All of this stuff has been around for forever.
Yeah.
Well, not forever, but it's been around for a long before Simon Sinek brought out the Golden Circle. But the reason I mention that, and this actually goes back to something that I think a lot of MSPs, and let's just quickly get behind something. A lot of these people that are running these companies, they are technicians that just happen to be selling managed services now.
Right.
They're not business owners, so
Right.
they don't know how to brand. Or I can't say they don't know how to, but they don't maybe put the same emphasis on the importance of brand, on the importance of the fact that branding is not the same as brand. That brand is your culture, it's the values, it's the mission, it's the reason that you exist, which feeds your value prop stuff.
Right.
So I think annoyingly we've run out of time, because I think maybe what would be great, Brad, is on the next interview, on the third interview, is we actually talk about the importance of how brand dictates how a sales org functions. Because I think a lot of people get that wrong, of this idea of, I think sales is about getting you from point A to point B, but sales is a continued conversation. But if you happen to buy something along the way, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And it's about and you said it, I think you said it best earlier on. It's like, and you said it best, sorry, on our first conversation. Sales is actually nothing more than amazing relationships all trying to solve similar problems. I don't think you said it quite like that, but that's my way of perceiving it. It's like, I think we've got lost in our multi-level marketing and the way marketing has bombarded us over the last 50, 60 years, that marketing is, and sales is not the selling of product. It is, who wants to come on this journey and what problems are you trying to solve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, that's what it is to me.
Yeah. Good
Cool.
stuff.
All right.
Talk
Brad,
about this
in
stuff
that
all
case,
day.
any final thoughts? Any final kind of like words of tips or tricks when it comes to? I know we were supposed to talk about your sales toolkit, but I feel like
no, like this is all good stuff. So here's what I would say. And you talked about shameless plug. The sales kit that we built is free. It's out there. If you go to hub.connectwise.com/growth kit, right? All one word, hub.connectwise.com/growth kit, all one word. There's 3 or 4 videos of kind of myself and a few of the people that helped develop it, delivering some content around it. And you can download I think there's like 47 or almost 50 templates and tools and modeling things. And there's everything that you need to get started, because I see so many people get stuck. I mean, it's why we built the kit. Like, they get stuck. They're not sure what to do. And there isn't a simple answer, but there's a lot of guidance in that tool. And then get involved in some kind of a community, because misery loves company is a great value proposition for figuring out, as a small business owner, how do I grow this thing?
Yeah, no, just on the topic of peer groups, I've been running peer groups to small businesses now for probably 8 years, if not longer, and simply because, and the best thing is, I do no talking, because the inherent issue that all peer groups have got is the facilitator, someone like myself. It's usually their opinion overarches everything, which I don't think is fair. Whereas what's really good about peer groups is if they're facilitated correctly, the facilitator is nothing more than a timekeeper and a subject.
Yeah.
God, what's the right word? A subject, someone that makes sure that we stay on topic.
Yeah.
So if someone,
Right.
if person A brings up topic, person B doesn't try and derail it. Is it we finish this subject and everybody
Right.
feels as if they contribute towards that. So really, really cool thing. So Brad,
Yep.
as always, 35 minutes of your time. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you talking. I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to do a third and where we dive into actually what that sales toolkit really can do. You've talked about 48 different videos. You've talked about resources. It's about the history of why it was built and the actual takeaway, what it could enable someone to go and do. It'd be good to do a little bit of things. So I'll put the link up for the hub for that on underneath the description of wherever this video is. And I'll see you on the next call, Brad.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Brad. See you soon.